Hi there. Nice to meet all of you. Eric, this question's for you. I'm a big fan of Twig, and so I wanted to know to what extent that you think that the future of the games industry can be accurately predicted because, on Twig, you've reacted to a number of different ideas that have attempted to rock the boat. For instance, like recently, Matthew Ball's take on the metaverse, Google's Stadia, Meta's various VR products and attempts, and of course blockchain games. And so, most often you predict that these ideas are going to fail. And I'd like to know, if there are, what criteria you have for choosing what ideas to believe in, or most often choosing not to believe in them.
Holy crap, that's a complicated questions, man. Like, I actually, my superpower is, or what I think my superpower is very, anyway, whatever, is that what does the consumer want, right? The notion that you can build it and they will come, I think is nonsense, right? I think consumers have spoken about what they want, and those desires don't change all that dramatically over time, right? So again, I've said this a million times, with the smartphone, you saw in 2010 that the smartphone was kind of reinvented by the iPhone, right, by Apple. And it was pretty clear that that total addressable market is going to be 6 billion people, right? And you could throw anything you want at that market and you're going to see success. That's a huge platform. But all these other ideas are peripherals or niche products or really hard to penetrate. Like, there's no clear path to ubiquity for blockchain, for VR, for Matthew Ball's version of the metaverse, right? Like, there is no clear ramp there. PC is a great platform. Consoles are an amazing platform, right? And mobile is having its challenges, but it's a huge platform, right? Those are obviously places where things will continue to evolve and develop over time. Building something new is hard, And then people always bring up Netflix. This is the last thing I'll say. People bring up Netflix, like, could you predicted the success of Netflix under your criterion? I think it's a bit harder, honestly. But you could say, anybody that used Blockbuster could say that experience was fucking terrible, right? Absolutely terrible. Like, that was needed to be solved and fixed, right? And Netflix did that, right? Very eloquently, both from the DVD shipping, but then also ultimately from doing online, like, on the cloud, right? So anyway, that's the kind of way I look at things. Try to do it from the consumer's perspective and what you're actually solving for the customer, right? And not just creating more friction. How about that?
Maybe I can also add a comment here, which is there's a book by Peter Thiel called 0 to 1, and one of the things that Thiel talks about is the notion that the best opportunities are defined by a secret, meaning that the biggest idea, whether it's like, you just look back at ideas like eBay, right? You're going to just sell stuff and, from anyone to anyone, or Uber, you're going to get into a stranger's car and it's just going to work. Like, the stupidest sounding ideas are the biggest opportunities, right? So I do think that to some degree, the next huge game may be something where everyone just dismisses it and thinks, wow, this is stupid. But it's going to be the conviction of an entrepreneur that knows that secret, that has that specific insight, that's going to be able to create the big opportunity, in my opinion.
All right. Thank you very much.
Hey, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name's Nitesh. And my question is for Tim. So as the CEO of a company with an upcoming RTS, in what ways do you think the current market is ready for this type of game? And also, how are you tailoring that RTS to a more modern audience? It's been a while since RTSs have been really popular in the market.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I love it. It's been a long time since there's been a major new RTS franchise launched. There have been some sequels. We had Age of Empires 4 recently. There have been some great indie titles, but there is tremendous enthusiasm from the core audience for the genre, and there just has been an absence of new franchises for them to consume. So really, to the depths of my soul, believe that there's an audience who's excited about having something new. But you're right, things have evolved so much. I mean, there's a hypothesis that MOBA is just what RTS evolved into, and that's kind of replaced the opportunity for a new RTS. I think MOBA is great, and there are obviously some highly successful games that have set high watermarks well above what RTS historically has achieved there. But it is a distinct game style, separate. Tower Defense came out of RTS as well, distinct game style. Auto Battlers came out of RTS, distinct game style. I think there's room for all of these genres. We do want to learn things, though. I really think that RTS historically has been perceived as a solitary experience. You're either playing campaign by yourself or 1v1 competitive. There were, team games in War 3 or Big Game Hunters and Brood War. Like, there are examples of social RTS, but by and large, it's pretty solitary. So one of the things we're really focused on is trying to learn from team shooters, MOBAs, Battle Royale, all of these genres that have pioneered being more social in a way that makes them both more viral, because you want to invite your friends to play with you, and stickier, because once your friends are there, you've got a reason to stay in the game ecosystem. So we're doing a lot of work on that front, but love that question. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jack. My question is for you, Joe. So I'm recently beginning sort of an onboarding process for a mobile games startup, which you'll be happy to hear is not a shooter. And so because of that, I was really interested looking at your website for Lila Games. You have like a very specific section for your values and company values. So I was wondering if you could talk a bit about just communicating those values and the importance of and how you go about communicating those values to potential people that you want to bring on. And then also specifically, I hadn't really heard of NORTHSTAR metrics before. So if you could talk about sort of how you go about like finding or establishing what you should use for NORTHSTAR metric, which I understand is a pretty general question. So I don't know.
Sure, yeah. Happy to do that. So I think that, one analogy that I like to use a lot when it comes to like work and working is just this notion of different flavors of ice cream, meaning that I like to think of different people having different preferences in their life in terms of what their objectives are, what they're looking for from their life and from work. And so one of the reasons why that we try to publish our values on the website, and we're very intentional about communicating those values, is because we want to really match the person to our work environment. And so as an example, one of the things that comes up a lot is this notion of work-life balance versus work-life integration. And I have a lot of respect for people who want work-life balance for their lives, and are looking for a work environment in which that is that's something that they can have. Now, we are a startup trying to make a new game, working with like a very inexperienced team, and the way that I know how to make success is not through work-life balance. And so, I think that it would be a tragedy to be inefficient, right? To waste somebody's time, to hire somebody because they didn't know, oh, wait a minute, I believe in work-life balance, and we hired that person, but we're more work-life integration, more like hard work ethic type of environment. And so if the objectives of what we're trying to do don't match the employee, then that's one of the reasons why we want to be very clear in terms of how we think that we're going to be successful and how we operate, because I do think that I think that a workplace should have the right to define how they want to operate their company and what they think is necessary to achieve success. But at the same time, employees should also look at different working environments and choose the environment that's right for them. So that's why we're very, very specific and explicit about trying to communicate that as much as possible. And then to your question about NORTHSTAR metrics, I think that a common problem with startups is just there's so many things we need to do. And the NORTHSTAR metric, I think, was popularized by Facebook, where I think Mark Zuckerberg was very explicit about how do you align what initiatives to do or what to do? And so he really oriented everything around one thing, which I think was like monthly active users or something like that. I forget the specific metric. And so for us as well, as a startup, we kind of have two levels of this. And so, we have one main thing that we're trying to do. So especially in soft launch, we'll only try to optimize against one thing, a specific metric, whether it's like, let's say we're trying to optimize D1 retention or D30 ARPU or something else. We're only going to be focusing on one thing at a time when we go into soft, because I think that just from my experience with other teams, it's like, oh yeah, we need to increase the retention, increase the monetization, and we're working on these 15 things, right? And it's like, then nothing gets done. And so by orienting the whole team around, okay, we all need to focus and improve this one metric, then that becomes, a way of focusing the company on the one thing that's going to make the biggest impact to your game or to your company. And then like at an organizational level, our leadership team also has like a similar type of philosophy around focus. And so we have a framework which we call our bullseye framework, where on Monday we'll have an initial meeting about what we try to accomplish for the week, and so we'll also try to create like a bullseye initiative or metric where it's what is the one thing that will help improve will have the biggest impact to the company or our team. And we'll work on that one, like obviously we'll work on other things, but that's the thing that we grade ourselves at the end of the week when we do our retro, is like, how did we move this one thing that we decided upon at the beginning of the week? Because again, I think when we try to do too much or when we focus on too many things, that oftentimes the most important thing that can drive the biggest difference to the company would get deprioritized or could potentially get lost in the shuffle.
If I can just clarify for that bullseye, is that something that changes week to week usually, or is that like usually your bullseye is something that's like, because it's such a big focus, like week to week, you're still always trying to move the same metric forward?
Yeah, so it often does change week to week. Now, sometimes there are initiatives that are more like, from a Scrum or Agile perspective, more like an epic, right? That may cross several weeks, but then what we then would try to do is then can we break down that epic into smaller chunks so that whatever can be accomplished in that 1 week is explicitly codified, and we're able to measure against that specific part of the bigger thing that we're trying to do.
Right. Awesome. Thank you so much. Both of those were super
No
helpful
problem.
Hi, my name is Haoying, and actually I have a question for Tim. It's about the game we are going to make. So there's no denying that the RTS games once is the most popular game genre. But however, today's game market is occupied by mobile game or battle royale games, and some people might think RTS game is kind of outdated and also kind of beginner unfriendly, because you do, instead of play with one unit, you need to control your army or multiple units. So why your team make a decision about making a new RTS game, and how would you like to deal with the kind of beginner unfriendly problem with it?
Great. Yeah. I'll maybe answer a little bit backwards. So the reason we chose to do RTS is just because we love the genre so much, both as players and as developers. So it really is a passion play. But you're right, it's hard. It's been eclipsed by other genres. So there are a couple answers there. The first thing is, we are putting a lot of thought into how to onboard new players. And if you think about it, most games you play, when you start the game, what you see is your character on screen, and you use controller or the arrow keys or WASD to move that character, and that's just mostly your experience with games. And there are exceptions, but you get into an RTS game, there's no one character that's you. Camera perspective's different. WASD doesn't do what you expect it to. Move your mouse, scroll off into the fog of war, and you're lost forever. You have no idea how to get it. There's so much about that first time experience playing it that's just overwhelming, even just the interface, the number of buttons that you see. So we are putting a lot of thought into that, but we're also just accepting that this genre attracts players who are I think, inspired to master things that are deep. And so, competitive mode, it's still going to be high skill ceiling. It's still going to be high APM. Like we're not afraid of embracing the depth of real-time strategy, but we're trying to provide a much friendlier cooperative experience, much friendlier campaign experience, and a better onboarding experience for players. And we really believe we can grow the genre. Can we grow it as big as MOBA or Battle Royale? I don't know. We're going to try. We'll see. I think every genre deserves its moment back in the sun. It was awesome to see what Elden Ring did for the Souls genre, if you're willing to call it a genre, but I think it is. So yeah, we'll see. We relish the challenge, is what I would say. But thanks for the question.
Actually, Tim, could I ask you a follow-up question to this?
Of course.
So I thought that was an interesting discussion. I too have heard this this concept that maybe RTS has shifted to MOBA. I disagree with that. I'm a huge RTS fan, as I've mentioned, but I do think that maybe the difference, and please tell me if you think I'm right or wrong, but I think one of the differences between MOBA and RTS is that if you look at it from a micro versus macro gameplay perspective, that MOBA is a little bit less macro, more micro than compared to a RTS. Have you thought about the relative, whether it's complexity or strategy involved from a macro perspective? Is that something that you're thinking about changing, or is it going to be relatively the same?
There will be opportunities as a new player to coming in to gradually ramp up how much macro you're going to take on. But the game that we're building is still a pure RTS. Like, we're not automating aspects of it to take it away. I think you're 100% right that MOBA does simplify that aspect. We see MOBA as kind of a gateway game to get into RTS. Like, you can graduate from MOBA to RTS, but we're not going to try to make it baby's first RTS or anything. Like, it'll be
Hey, Tim,
traditional.
can I just throw in one other question? We had Alan Adam here a couple of weeks ago, and part of the conversation did pivot towards is, do you consider Clash Royale to be an RTS?
I don't consider, well, so yeah, this is going to be my answer. Like, there is a category of strategy games that includes 4X, it includes Clash Royale, Clash of Clans, Tower D. Like, we could there's like turn-based strategy games. We could go down a long list. Clash Royale is absolutely a strategy game, and it happens in real time, but RTS to me means a very specific genre. So it doesn't fit my definition of RTS.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Mara. Thanks so much. This has been great. My question is for Eric. I was listening to the Twig podcast earlier this weekend, and I heard your very candid thoughts around VR and particularly Meta's take on it. And I think it's safe to say you're skeptical of the current state of affairs, not only for Meta, but it seems like VR as a whole. So my question was, what do you think it'll take for VR to achieve the sort of engagement numbers and kind of adoption as console or mobile games? And do you think it'll ever get there, actually?
There's just so many reasons why it won't take off. I mean, the form factor is one, obviously. Like, you need a better interface for VR to make it sense. But I just don't think there's a lot of consumers that really want to log into a system and in absence of everything else, right? That's just not the way people consume content. Like, even kids these days are doing so many different things at once, looking at their phones, watching TV and on their computers, whatever. So I think we're just a long way away from it, to be honest. And to my chagrin, I want to be able to jack in. When I'm 70 and I can't move around anymore, plug me in to the VR Matrix, dude. I'm in. Like, I'm 100%. I just don't think the consumer's ready for it. And I think VR would have died. It already died, and the only reason it's even alive now is because of Facebook. Otherwise, that business came and went. So what it will take, and it's not to be like also Mr. Debbie Downer, but like, I think it's going to be a social experience. It's going to be something like Rec Room or some kind of like social experience that embraces like a much bigger demographic than console players, because console players could give a crap, honestly, about it. So they're too busy playing their optimized experiences on the TV. So I think that's what it's going to take. Clearly, Horizon and what Facebook's working on now is not there. But I think I agree with Matthew Ball on this one point. It's inevitable, right? It's going to happen, right? But I think I either will be dead or long retired by the time it happens. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
So I got follow-up questions if I can.
Oh, go for it.
So first, because I actually agree with that perspective, but curious how you regard AR relative to VR then and its potential, since it does potentially solve the shut out the outside world aspect of what you were talking about.
Well, I think the problem with AR, to make compelling AR, you need to render things in real time. And that would take like a Spark station, like it would take a whole server to like actually do that. So I think we're really far away from a technical perspective of making that a reality. The AR that you want to happen, not the AR that your little character. It's not Pokemon Go. That's not even AR really, right? It's actually like rendering thing in real time while you're looking at it, like, and moving around it. Like rendering in real time takes a lot of processing power. So I think we're just so far away from that from a technical perspective. Latency. I mean, there's all kinds of technical issues around that, and I'm not a big technical person, but that's what the technical people tell me. But that one, and I think I agree with most people on this point, is AR seems more digestible for the consumer than VR, 100%. The problem is that you need that killer app, a social experience, something that like everyone can enjoy to make it compelling, right? And the one point I'll make on this, which is a little bit unrelated, is that the notion that AR or VR is going to be jump-started by sending it to corporations is ridiculous, right? That's a ridiculous assumption. I don't know why people, I mean, that's what happened with PCs to some degree, I guess, but that's not the reality that we live in. Everything is driven by the consumer these days. And so it has to win with the consumer. I just wanted to, I don't know why I thought of that off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
no, I agree with all that.
Very good point.
Last follow-up I was going to ask then, BCI, brain computer interface, projecting it all forward.
Dude, you were at BitCraft with me, dude. I know you were there because that shit was so freaking cool. Like I was blown away, right? But even they were saying it's 25 years away. But they have, like, just to put it in perspective, they have headsets that have sensors that sense your brain. So like people with MLS or other problems can actually move shit with their mind, right? It's incredible, right? It's really incredible stuff. The technology's there, and these people are just obviously geniuses. But again, it's the same thing. Like exactly, when will that technology be ready for prime time, and when will consumers be willing to throw something on top of their head to read their brains? Like when. I mean, just think about it. When are you going to actually stick something in the back of your neck like the Matrix and to plug into something? I mean, that's what we're kind of talking about, right? I don't know if the consumer's going to be there for a long time. Even kids these days, I don't know if they're ready for that.
Yeah, definitely not me, but interesting to think about for sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
We're running towards a little late, so we're gonna have one more question, then we'll wrap it up. Sorry, everyone else.
Hi, thank you all very much. My name is Mike, and my question is for Joe. So Lila Games emphasizes shared company values, even to the point of threatening termination for employees that don't share those values. And I'm wondering about the story behind that approach. Did it come from previous experiences at other workplaces, or is there another story behind that?
Well, I mean, I think there's just a big difference between, and I mentioned Peter Thiel's book 0 to 1 before, but I think in 0 to 1 environments in which you're trying to build something new, it requires a little bit more concentration, intensity, focus, things like that. You're not in a stable environment, right? And so from that perspective, I think performance is more important than stability. I think in a 1 to N or more stable company, stability is more important than performance. So I think it really just depends upon, from a work environment perspective, the context, the situational context in which you're operating. But I think for me and for us, and for me in particular, in the sense that because we are a startup with limited funds, and because I also don't know how to achieve success, like the success I've had, like when I was at Fun Plus and other companies like that, where I've had success were environments in which, we needed everyone aligned and performing and contributing. It's like you have less time to train. And although we do spend a lot of time training some of the folks that we have, but, we also have the luxury of not, being in California and having super expensive people. But I think based upon just my inability to not understand how to have a successful team that don't share our values, that's basically why we've chosen that approach.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, thank you all so much. If you don't mind, we do like to take a picture sometimes with our guests, so we're gonna have the class come up, and
Okay.
you guys will be projected in the back as part of the picture.